Hey everybody, my name is Rishi and I'm a software engineer at Oasis Labs. Today I'm excited to present PrivateSQL, which is a data sharing tool to optimize data utility with differential privacy. Oasis Labs is a technology organization that develops cutting edge privacy preserving technologies that aim to strike a balance between data utility and privacy preservation, essentially to enable the responsible and effective use of data. So, what is the problem? Existing data anonymization practices for sharing sensitive data include masking, redaction, and tokenization, all of which are techniques to hide certain parts of the data before sharing it. However, number one, even identifying which columns are sensitive is error prone, and individuals can be re identified by seemingly non sensitive columns, especially if it's used in conjunction with other data. For example, it's been shown that upwards of 80% of the US population can be uniquely identified by the combination of birth date, zip code, and gender. But number two, even if that's done correctly, determining how heavily to hide and redact information in these sensitive columns is tricky. Not hiding enough can compromise privacy, while hiding too much can destroy the utility of the data. For example, lots of current practices for maintaining HIPAA compliance require redacting the last three digits of the zip code, which can essentially destroy the utility of any location based analysis. But finally, even if these previous two steps are done correctly, all of this is very labor intensive and means that approval requests for data can take months. So, this is where Private SQL comes in. Using differential privacy, PrivateSQL offers a solution for organizations to gain insights from highly sensitive data immediately, while remaining compliant with privacy regulations like HIPAA and GDPR. Organizations can allow their internal and external partners query access to sensitive data without modifying the data or letting the data leave their cloud. And no individual can be identified from the results of the queries alone, regardless of how complex the query is. So, what is differential privacy? At a high level, differential privacy is a statistical framework to provide privacy that gives mathematical guarantees on how much can be learned from any given individual in the dataset. This means that essentially, if we have two datasets, one of which contains my information and one of which doesn't, the results of any differentially private analysis on either dataset will not be too different. And we can see the exact mathematical formulation on the screen. This difference between the two analyses is bounded by what we call epsilon, which is a privacy parameter that controls how much privacy we want. The smaller epsilon is, the more privacy we get, and vice versa. One of the really nice properties of differential privacy is called composition, where if I run query 1 with epsilon 1 privacy and query 2 with epsilon 2 privacy, the total privacy budget consumed is epsilon 1 plus epsilon 2. And data administrators get to set the total epsilon to be used for a dataset, and that's referred to as the privacy budget. And PrivateSQL also implements different versions of differential privacy, some of which allow more queries to be run with the same privacy budget. So, how does it actually work? PrivateSQL is essentially a middle layer between the data analyst and the sensitive data where it currently lives. Differential privacy relies on two main operations, clipping and noising, and PrivateSQL parses any incoming SQL queries into abstract syntax trees to analyze the operations that are included within those SQL queries. It then folds these clipping and noising operations into the query to generate a rewritten query, which is then executed on the database engine, which means that results streaming directly out of the database are already differentially private. So, what are the key features? PrivateSQL implements differential privacy on a number of standard SQL databases, including Postgres, MySQL, BigQuery, and others. And it supports all major SQL aggregations like counts, sums, averages, standard deviations, min and max, and more. It automatically enforces differential privacy, which means that there's no need to whitelist or blacklist queries. PrivateSQL automatically guarantees that query results are limited to aggregate data, not individual records. Because it requires no modification of the data or where it lives, it's easy to deploy, and it automatically tracks the privacy budget across queries, users, and teams, which means that we can set fine-grained policies on how much privacy we want different individuals to use. And finally, it's HIPAA compliant and is already being used by a healthcare partner. PrivateSQL, in setting it up, just requires some information about the current data, which can be easily provided through the admin portal for PrivateSQL and is automatically generated through looking at the data and generating reasonable defaults. And it also requires some information about the privacy parameters to set. But we provide intuitive visualizations for people to understand the trade-offs and limitations involved with setting different privacy parameters. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to learn more, please visit the link on the screen, and I'm excited to hear from all of y'all. Thank you.